Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. Tonight, we're traveling back to a world most of us can barely imagine. A world before electric lights turned night into day, before central heating made winter a minor inconvenience, before smartphones connected us to help at the touch of a screen. We're going to the Rocky Mountains in the winter of 1831, to a time when the cold wasn't something you escaped by turning up a thermostat. It was something you lived inside, breathed into your lungs, felt in your bones every moment of every day. Forget the cozy log cabins you've seen in movies. Forget the romantic campfires and the noble frontier spirit Hollywood sold you. The truth was colder, harsher, more brutal than most of us today could endure for even a single night. This is a story about what it means to care for another person when caring might be the difference between life and death. About the small gestures that become enormous in the cold. About the warmth that exists, not in fire alone, but in the quiet ways people keep each other alive. So before you get comfortable in your warm bed tonight, before you drift off to the sound of my voice, take just a moment to like this video. If you enjoy these journeys we take together. Subscribe if you'd like more nights like this, but only if you genuinely want to. I'm simply grateful you're here. And with Christmas just around the corner, I want to wish you warmth in every sense of the word. May your holidays be filled with the kind of care we'll explore tonight, the quiet, unglamorous acts of keeping each other alive and warm. Whether you're celebrating with family or finding peace in solitude, may you feel cherished. Merry Christmas to all of you wherever you are in this world. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. I love knowing that while I'm speaking these words, you might be watching the sun rise in Tokyo, or settling in for evening in London, or finding that perfect late-night stillness somewhere in the American heartland. Now dim the lights if you can. Maybe turn on a fan if you like that gentle white noise. Get comfortable, pull the blankets up, and let's drift back together. Back through nearly 200 years to an October evening in 1831, when a young man from St. Louis learned that survival is less about what you know and more about who keeps you alive. Let's begin. You can still remember the warmth. That's what stays with you most as the cold tightens around your chest like an iron band. Not the adventure you'd imagined during those sultry Missouri nights. Not the fortune in beaver pelts. Just the memory of warmth and how you once took it for granted. Your name doesn't matter much out here. Back in St. Louis, it meant something. Your family's position, your education, the cut of your coat. Out here, 3 weeks northwest of the last trading post, your name is simply Greenhorn. Or when the man across the fire is feeling generous, the boy. That man's name is Gabe. Just Gabe. He's been out here for 15 years, and somewhere in those years, whatever he was before, dissolved like morning frost. What remains is efficient as a knife blade and about as talkative. Right now, he's watching you the way you might watch a wounded animal, calculating whether it's worth the effort to save. He watches your hands specifically. He watches the way they tremble, not just with the shivers, but with the loss of fine motor control. He knows that once your hands go, your ability to make fire goes, and then you are just a ghost waiting to happen. He doesn't step in yet. He doesn't take the task from you. He simply observes, his eyes narrowed against the biting wind, assessing how much fight is left in your core. He is looking at the adductor muscle of your thumb, the place where grip strength lives. He sees it spasm, a tiny involuntary flutter that tells him your blood is retreating to your core, abandoning the extremities. To him, that flutter is a countdown clock. 10 minutes, maybe 15 before your hands become useless claws of frozen meat. He shifts his weight, his buffalo coat crinkling softly. The wind picks up a sudden gust that carries the scent of snow from the high peaks, and you instinctively curl inward. Without a word, Gabe moves. He doesn't come to comfort you. He simply slides his bulk between you and the north. He sits down, his broad back becoming a sudden, silent wall against the gale. The wind stops tearing at your face. In the sudden quiet of his shadow, the temperature seems to rise 5 degrees. He doesn't look at you. He stares out at the darkening horizon, letting his body take the punishment of the wind so yours doesn't have to. It is the first act of care, brutal and efficient. "You're shivering," he says. It's not concern, it's observation. The same tone he might use to note that the sky is darkening or the wind is shifting north. You are shivering. You've been shivering for the past 2 hours ever since you stopped moving. The October wind cuts through your wool coat like it's not even there. Your fingers have that thick, clumsy feeling. Your toes disappeared an hour ago, just numb lumps at the ends of your feet. "I'm fine," you say, and your voice comes out smaller than you intended. The vastness swallows sound out here. You've noticed that. Back in St. Louis, voices carried echoed filled spaces. Out here, words just vanish into the enormous indifference of rock and sky. The cold out here isn't like winter back home. This cold has texture. It has weight. It presses against your skin like something solid, something with intention. You can feel it searching for ways inside your clothes, probing every gap, every seam, every place where fabric meets skin. It's patient, this cold. It knows it has all night, all winter, all the time in the world to find your warmth and take it. And the silence is its partner. It is not an empty silence. It is a heavy, drowning thing. Back home, silence was just a pause between sounds. Here, silence is a physical pressure. It pours into your ears like freezing water, filling your head, until the only sound you can hear is the rushing of your own blood and the dry, brittle sound of air entering your nostrils. It feels as though the mountains are holding their breath, waiting for you to make a mistake, waiting for the fire to fail. It amplifies the isolation, making you feel small, fragile, and utterly temporary. And there's something else you're learning about cold. It changes the way you think. Back in St. Louis, your mind moved quickly, jumping from thought to thought, making plans, remembering conversations, worrying about social obligations. Out here, your thoughts have slowed to match the landscape. They move like molasses in January, thick and sticky, taking effort to form. You find yourself forgetting why you stood up, forgetting what you were about to say. The cold is stealing your cognition, pulling blood away from your brain to keep your heart pumping, your lungs working. Gabe knows this too. He's watching for it, for the moment when your eyes go glassy, when your speech starts to slur, when you stop making sense. Because that's when hypothermia stops being uncomfortable and starts being lethal. That's when men sit down in the snow and never stand up again, convinced they're warm, convinced they're home, their brains lying to them as they die. You notice your thoughts are circular now. You keep thinking about the fire. Will it light? Will it hold? Will it be enough? The same thought over and over like a prayer or a curse. You can't seem to think past it to anything else. The cold has narrowed your world to this single point: fire or death. And Gabe sees this happening. He sees the way your eyes have lost focus, the way you're swaying slightly, even though you're sitting still. He's calculating how much longer he can let this go on before it becomes dangerous. He's done this calculation before with other greenhorns, and he knows the margins are thin. Push too far and you get frostbite, hypothermia, death. Don't push far enough and you don't learn. And not learning means dying alone the first time you're by yourself. So he waits. He watches. He becomes that windbreak, that silent wall between you and the worst of it. And in his waiting, in his watching, there's a kind of teaching that has nothing to do with words. He's teaching you that care sometimes looks like letting someone struggle. That help sometimes looks like presence rather than intervention. That survival is as much about bearing witness as it is about taking action. The landscape around you has gone monochrome. The golden light of afternoon has bled away, leaving only greys and blacks and the deep blue of twilight. The rock you're sitting on has become a part of you, or you've become a part of it. You can't tell anymore. The cold has fused you to this place, made you as immobile and unfeeling as stone. But Gabe hasn't become stone. Despite sitting motionless, despite the cold, despite everything, he remains human, alert, alive, in ways you're struggling to understand. His eyes track the movement of clouds. His nose samples the air for the smell of snow. His ears catalogue sounds you can't even hear anymore. He's reading the mountain like you might read a book back home, absorbing information, making decisions based on what he's learning. And what he's learning right now is that you're close to your limit. He can see it in the way your jaw has stopped clenching, which paradoxically means you're colder, not warmer. The shivering is your body fighting. When it stops, the fight is over. You're maybe 5 minutes from that point, maybe less. This is when he speaks the words that will change everything. Not hurry up or you're too slow. Just 2 words, simple and direct. And the silence. The silence is somehow worse than the cold. Back in St. Louis, even deep winter nights had sound. Horses in distant stables. Neighbors' voices through walls. The creak and settle of buildings holding heat. Out here, the silence is so complete, it becomes its own presence. It fills your ears like water. It makes you aware of your heartbeat, your breathing, the small sounds your body makes just existing. It amplifies the sound of the wind hissing through the dry scrub, a sound that feels like the landscape itself is whispering that you don't belong here. Gabe doesn't respond. He's already moving, gathering dead branches from the pines. His movements are economical, purposeful. No wasted motion. You've been watching him for 3 weeks now, trying to understand what separates the men who survive from the ones whose bones bleach white under winter snows. The light is failing fast. The days contract like living things curling away from cold. One moment there's enough light to see the distant peaks still holding summer's last defiant gold. The next shadows pool everywhere, and the temperature drops so fast you can feel it happening degree by degree, stealing the warmth from the air itself. Flint and steel, Gabe says. Your hands are so cold it takes 3 tries to unbuckle your shooting bag. The kit sits wrapped in oiled leather, more valuable than the rifle that cost your father 6 months' wages, more valuable than the custom-made boots. Because without fire, without the ability to create it, the rest doesn't matter. You've practiced this. Every evening for 3 weeks, Gabe has made you strike fire while he watches in silence. But confidence built in September evenings doesn't translate when your fingers won't bend properly, and the wind is trying to steal every spark. You kneel on the cold stone arranging your tinder. The nest of shredded bark and dry grass goes in a small depression. The char cloth sits ready. Your hands position the flint and steel muscle memory from repetition. Strike. The spark flies bright and urgent and dies in the wind. Strike again. Another spark. Gone. Strike. 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 Gabe watches the angle of your wrist. He sees the fatigue setting in the way your knuckles are whitening. He doesn't take the steel from you. If he does it for you, you won't learn. And if you don't learn, you die the first time you're alone. But he does shift his position. He leans forward just an inch, his shoulder blocking a sudden eddy of wind that was swirling around the rock face. He creates a pocket of still air, a tiny sanctuary for the spark. "Stop," Gabe says. "You're rushing. The spark smells your fear. Slow down." You take a breath. It shudders in your lungs. You look at the steel. It looks cold, unforgiving. "Reset," Gabe murmurs. "Check your char cloth. Is it dry? Is it positioned to catch?" You check. You adjust. You feel his presence looming over you, not as a threat, but as a windbreak, a human shield against the elements. Strike. This time, the spark catches. It lands on the char cloth and holds a tiny glowing red eye in the grey twilight. "Gentle," Gabe whispers. "Don't blow it out. Feed it air. Treat it like it's the last living thing on Earth." You cup your hands, protecting that fragile red ember. You blow soft and steady, ignoring the screaming protest of your frozen fingers. Smoke curls up, acrid and sweet. Then a tiny tongue of yellow flame licks the dry grass. It's such a small thing, this fire. So fragile it seems almost cruel to hope it will last. But Gabe is already adding twigs in a careful structure, and slowly, methodically, the fire grows. You sit back, and for the first time in hours, you can feel your face relax. You hadn't realized how tightly you'd been clenching your jaw. "Not bad," Gabe says. From him, this qualifies as lavish praise. Heat begins to push back against the cold. You hold your hands toward it, palms out, and the heat on your skin is so intense it almost hurts. But it's a good hurt. A living hurt that means your body hasn't given up yet. The transformation is almost instant. As warmth floods back into your extremities, you gasp involuntarily. The pain is exquisite, like 1,000 needles being driven into your flesh simultaneously. Your fingers throb with each heartbeat, the blood vessels dilating, circulation returning. It's agony, but it's the agony of life reasserting itself. Gabe watches this too. He's seen this response 1,000 times in 1,000 greenhorns, and he knows it means you're going to be okay. The ones who don't react, whose hands stay white and numb even by the fire, those are the ones who lose fingers, lose toes, lose their ability to work, and therefore their ability to survive. "Hurts, don't it?" he observes. Not a question. A statement of fact. You nod, unable to speak, focusing on breathing through the pain. Your hands feel like they're being held in boiling water, even though you know intellectually that the fire is several feet away, that the heat is moderate, manageable. "That's good pain," Gabe says. "That's your body remembering how to live. The pain you got to worry about is when there's no pain. When your fingers are white and you can't feel nothing. That's when you're losing them for good." He holds his own hands toward the flame. though his don't show the same distress yours do. His circulation is better, his body more adapted. But you notice he still checks them carefully, examining each finger, flexing each joint, making sure everything works as it should. Even after 15 years, he doesn't take anything for granted. The fire crackles and pops as the fresh wood catches. Sparks spiral upward into the darkening sky, tiny orange stars that wink out as they rise. Each pop makes you flinch slightly, your nerves on edge, your body still in survival mode, even though the immediate danger has passed. Gabe notices this too. "You'll stop jumping at that after a while," he says. "Your body needs time to understand it's safe. Right now, everything's a threat. That's normal. That's how you stay alive. But eventually, you'll learn what sounds matter and what sounds don't. You'll be able to sleep through a whole tree falling, but a twig snapping wrong will bring you awake with your hand on your knife." It amplifies the isolation, making you feel small, fragile, and utterly temporary. You gather wood together in the last light-breaking dead branches, accumulating a pile that seems excessive until you remember this fire needs to last 12 hours. Go out even once, and you'll spend the rest of the night trying to get warm again, burning precious energy your body can't afford to waste. By the time full darkness settles, you have enough wood, should have enough. Gabe arranges it carefully within arm's reach of where he'll sleep. You notice he doesn't trust you with this responsibility yet. "Eat," Gabe says, and he tosses you a chunk of dried meat. Then he tosses you another, larger than the first. You look at the two pieces in your lap, then you look at his. He has kept a piece the size of a playing card for himself. Yours is nearly double that. "Why?" You ask, your voice raspy. Gabe doesn't look up from the fire. "Your body burns hotter," he says. "You're young. You haven't hardened off yet. You shiver more. Shivering burns tallow. If you run out of fuel tonight, you won't wake up tomorrow. I'm just protecting my investment. Need you to carry traps in the morning." It's a lie, or at least not the whole truth. He is doing the calculus of survival. He has calculated exactly how many calories you need to generate body heat through a negative 20-degree night. He is sacrificing his own warmth to ensure yours. He is feeding the furnace of your metabolism because he knows yours is less efficient. What you don't know yet, what you won't understand until much later, is that Gabe ate before you woke this morning. A handful of pemmican cached away in his pack, consumed in the pre-dawn darkness while he kept watch. He's been managing the food supply with the precision of an accountant, making sure you get what you need while he stretches his own rations thin enough to see through. It's a kind of mathematics he learned the hard way over winters that tested him in ways you can't yet imagine. He knows that a young man your age, your size, needs roughly 3,000 calories a day just to maintain weight in this cold. More when you're working, which is always. But the supply is finite. The elk he killed 5 days ago won't last forever, and the hunting will get harder as winter deepens and the animals either migrate or den up. So he's making choices. He's deciding that your survival is more important than his comfort. Not because he's selfless, he'd probably say, but because it's practical. You're the investment. You're the one who hasn't yet learned enough to survive alone. You're the one who represents Thomas, who reminds him of why he stays out here, why he keeps going, why he hasn't just laid down in the snow and let it take him. Because there have been times, times he won't talk about when that seemed like the easier choice. When the loneliness was so profound, it felt like drowning. When the cold was so persistent, it seemed like it had always been cold, and would always be cold world without end. When he couldn't remember why any of this mattered. But then there's a greenhorn stumbling off a boat in St. Louis, eyes wide with dreams of adventure and fortune, and Gabe signs on to teach him the trade. And in teaching, he remembers. In keeping someone else alive, he finds reason to keep himself alive. So yes, you get the bigger piece, you get the better sleeping spot, you get the benefit of his body blocking the wind. Because in keeping you alive, he's keeping Thomas's promise alive. He's keeping his own reason for living alive. You'll understand this someday, maybe years from now when you're the old hand teaching some wide-eyed youngster how to strike a spark in the wind. Maybe you'll find yourself giving away the bigger piece of meat, telling yourself it's just practical, just protecting your investment. And maybe you'll recognize the lie for what it is, the only way some men know how to say they care. You eat in silence. The fire pops and hisses. Somewhere below, a wolf howls. Another answers. Not close, but not as far away as you'd prefer. The sound makes something primitive in your spine tighten. Gabe doesn't react. He arranges his blanket near the fire checks. His rifle makes sure his knife is loose. Then he looks at you. First lesson about sleeping in the mountains, he says. You don't really sleep, not like back home. You rest. You let your body recover. But part of you stays awake, always listening. The fire, the weather animals. Sleep too deep out here, and you might not wake up at all. You nod, trying to absorb this. Second lesson. Gabe continues. The cold you feel right now. This is nothing. This is just October. Wait till January. Wait till the real winter comes, when the temperature drops so far the sap in trees explodes like gunshots, when your breath freezes in your beard. Men die in winter out here. Good men. Experienced men. They make one mistake, and that's all it takes. He lies down, pulls his blanket over himself. Within minutes, his breathing deepens. But you notice he's positioned himself so the fire is between him and the darkness downslope. So his rifle is under his hand. So he's not quite as relaxed as he appears. You arrange your own blanket, lie down on the hard ground. The cold immediately begins seeping up from the earth, stealing warmth from your back, your hips. The fire warms your front, but your back feels pressed against ice. The stars are out now, more stars than you've ever seen. The Milky Way sprawls across the sky like spilled milk so dense with light it casts shadows. You can see the Big Dipper, the North Star. Gabe has taught you to use them to navigate even in darkness. Practical knowledge, survival knowledge. The wind shifts, the fire flutters, and for a moment you fear it will go out. But it holds flames bending but not breaking. Then you remember Gabe's words about men who died, good men. One mistake. You sit up, add wood to the fire. The flames leap higher. Heat pushes back against the night. You lie down again. And you understand, really understand for the first time, that this is your life now. Not for one night, but for months. The entire winter stretches ahead. And this October cold is just the beginning. The question isn't whether you're strong enough. The question is whether you can learn fast enough. Whether you can become someone different from the person who left St. Louis with dreams. Gabe shifts in his sleep, adds wood to the fire without fully waking. an automatic response trained into his body by 15 years of nights like this. You watch him do this. Watch the way his hand knows where the wood is even in darkness, the way he places it without thought. This is what survival looks like, you realize. Not dramatic, not heroic. Just small actions repeated endlessly, keeping the fire alive through another night. You close your eyes and listen. The fire, the wind, the distant wolves, the infinite silence of the mountains. And you rest. But you don't quite sleep, because out here sleep is a luxury, and luxury is something civilization left behind. The cold presses in. But here, beside this fire, with this man who gave you the larger portion of food without being asked, you're warm enough. Warm enough. Not warm. Not comfortable. But enough. And somehow, impossibly, that becomes everything. Morning comes the way it always does in the mountains. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if someone drew back a curtain. One moment, darkness. The next, the eastern sky bleeding gold. The light hits the peaks first, turning the grey granite into pillars of rose and violet. This phenomenon, the alpenglow, is one of the few mercies the high country offers. It is startlingly beautiful. For a few minutes, the harsh, killing landscape is painted in the colours of a bruised peach. But the light is deceptive. It brings brightness, but not warmth. The dawn is often the coldest part of the day, the moment when the earth has radiated away all its stored heat from the previous sun. The air is still frozen in place. If you spit, it might crackle before it hits the ground. You exhale, and the steam from your breath hangs in the air, a stationary cloud that marks your position. You're stiff when you try to sit up. Every joint protests. The ground has left its impression on your body, a map of stones and hard earth. Gabe is already up. You don't know when he woke, but the fire has been rebuilt, and there's a pot of snow melting over it. You realize he must have been up for a while, letting you sleep, keeping watch alone in the cold dawn. The snow in the pot is transforming white crystals, becoming clear water, and you watch this transformation with an intensity that surprises you. Everything out here seems significant now, every small change, every process. The snow doesn't just melt, it goes through stages. First, it becomes wet and slushy, still white, but heavier. Then it turns translucent, grey-white, and neither quite solid nor liquid. Finally, it surrenders completely to heat, becoming water that steams gently in the morning cold. Gabe has positioned the pot just so close enough to the fire to melt, but not so close it boils away. He's done this 1,000 times, and his hands know the exact placement without thought. You're learning that this is what mastery looks like in the wilderness. Not flashy demonstrations of skill, but quiet competence in 1,000 small tasks, each one done exactly right, because doing them wrong means discomfort at best, death at worst. While the water heats, Gabe is doing something you haven't noticed him do before. He's stretching. Not the casual stretch of someone waking up, but deliberate, methodical movements. He rotates his shoulders, rolls his neck, flexes his hands. He's checking his body, making sure everything still works, cataloguing any new aches or pains that might signal injury or illness. "You should do this too," he says, noticing your attention. "Every morning, your body will try to lie to you out here, try to hide problems until they're too big to fix. You need to know what's working and what's not before you start the day's work." You try to copy his movements, and immediately you feel places where your body has tightened up overnight. Your left shoulder burns when you rotate it. Your right ankle protests when you flex it. Your fingers are stiff, the joints swollen from yesterday's cold. That shoulder, Gabe observes. You slept on it wrong. You nod. Going to have to learn to sleep without doing that. Out here, you can't afford injuries, even small ones. A pulled muscle makes you slow. Slow makes you cold. Cold makes you dead. He walks over and does something unexpected. He places his hand on your shoulder, feeling the muscle, assessing the damage. Not torn, he says after a moment. Just tight. Work it gentle today. Don't favor it, or it'll get worse. His hand on your shoulder is warm, rough, impersonal. It's the touch of someone checking a tool, making sure it's still functional. But underneath the impersonality is care. He needs you functional, yes, but there's more to it than that. He's learned over 15 years that small attentions prevent big disasters. That catching problems early is the difference between survival and tragedy. We'll move today, he says. No preamble, no good morning, just information delivered in that flat voice. This spot's too exposed. Need to find better shelter before the weather turns. You nod, working your jaw. Your beard has frost in it. Another small lesson in what cold means. The morning routine is simple, because it has to be. Roll your blanket, secure your gear, eat if there's time. Everything you own must be carried so nothing is wasted. The rifle, the shooting bag with powder ball patches, flint and steel, a knife, a hatchet, a single wool blanket, a tin cup. That's your world now. That's everything you have between yourself and the wilderness. The rifle is the heaviest burden. A Hawking rifle, 50 caliber with a heavy octagonal barrel. It weighs 10 pounds, and as the day wears on, it will feel like 50. The iron of the barrel is so cold that if you touch it with a bare, damp hand, your skin will instantly bond to the metal, freezing to it. You learn to handle it only by the wooden stock or with mittens. It is a demanding object. It requires constant care. You have to keep the lock dry, keep the powder from clumping, keep the bore clean of fouling. It smells of sulfur and gun oil, a sharp industrial scent in a world of pine and earth. It is your protector, your food source, and your burden. You follow Gabe down from the rocky outcrop. He moves through the landscape like water finding its course, reading terrain, in a language you're only beginning to understand. He avoids open meadows, keeps to the tree line, watches the sky constantly. You are beginning to realize that the Rocky Mountains are not just a location on a map. They are a living, breathing entity that watches you back, waiting for a single moment of carelessness. See that? He points northwest. Dark clouds building. Clouds, snow. Tomorrow, maybe the day after. We need to be situated by then. Snow. In October. You walk for hours. The landscape shifts from pine forest to bare talus slopes, to stands of aspen already golden. A creek runs through a small valley, and Gabe follows it upstream. The water is clear, so cold it makes your teeth ache when you stop to drink. Always go upstream, Gabe says, watching you. Downstream, you don't know what's died in it. Upstream, you find clean water. These small pieces of knowledge, he dispenses them without emphasis, as if commenting on weather. But you're learning to listen, to remember. Each one might be the difference someday. As you walk, Gabe keeps up a low murmur of observation. It's not quite conversation, more like thinking out loud. But you realize he's doing it for you, teaching you how to read the land. See how the grass is bent there. That's where deer walked through this morning, maybe an hour ago, heading down to water. See how the aspens on that hillside are yellowing from the bottom up? Not the top, means an early frost hit the low ground first. Cold air sinks, settles in valleys. That's where you don't camp in winter unless you want to wake up dead. He stops by a stand of lodgepole pines. "Look at the bark," he says. He runs his hand over the south side of the trunk, then the north. Moss on the north, yes, but look at the branches. They're shorter on the windward side. The wind prunes them, tells you the prevailing direction of the storms here. If you get lost in a whiteout, look at the trees. They're pointing the way. He shows you a patch of berries, dried and shriveled. Bear food, but old. No bear sign here for weeks. Means they've moved lower or started to den. You realize he is constructing a mental map that has nothing to do with distances and everything to do with resources and threats. The land is a narrative, a story written in footprints, scat broken twigs and wind-sculpted wood. He points to a cluster of ravens circling in the distance. Something died there. Maybe elk, maybe a bear's kill. Ravens find everything. They're worth watching. They'll tell you where the meat is, where the predators are. Smart birds. Out here, you pay attention to what the smart things are doing. You try to absorb it all, but there's so much. Every rock, every tree, every cloud formation carries information. The land is not silent at all, you're realizing. It's shouting at you constantly. You just don't speak the language yet. Gabe stops at a place where two game trails intersect. He kneels, examining the ground. Elk came through here. See the tracks deep in the front, shallow in the back. That means they were moving slow grazing, maybe not spooked. And look here. He points to a pile of droppings, still fresh, still steaming slightly in the cold air. This morning, maybe 2 hours ago. He stands, looks around, reading the terrain. If we had time, this is where I'd set up a blind. But we don't. Shelter first, food second, always that order. Food doesn't matter if you freeze to death before you can eat it. The creek you're following begins to narrow the valley closing in. The walls on either side rise steeper, more sheltering. The wind that was cutting through you on the open slopes is blocked here, and the temperature feels noticeably warmer. Not warm, but less hostile. "This is better," Gabe says, and you can hear approval in his voice. "Protected. Water right here. Wood abundant. Good sight lines so nothing can sneak up on us. This is the kind of spot you look for." He's teaching you to think like he thinks, to see what he sees. Every place is evaluated not just for what it is, but for what it will be in a blizzard, in deep cold in the middle of the night, when something large is moving through the darkness. Every place is assessed for its defensive value, its resources and its escape routes. "Mountains will teach you," he says, "if you listen." Problem is, most men don't listen. They talk at the land, try to force it to be what they want. That gets you killed. You got to listen, adapt, become part of the flow. By midday, Gabe stops. You're in a fold of land where two hills meet. A stream runs through it, clear and fast. There are pine trees here, thick ones with low branches. Deadfall everywhere, providing raw material. "Here," Gabe says. You drop your pack, grateful to shed the weight. What happens next, you'll remember for the rest of your life. Not because it's dramatic, because it's not. It's just Gabe building shelter, something he's done 100 times before. But you're watching now with different eyes, understanding finally that this isn't just carpentry. It's care. Care for himself. Care for you. Care expressed through competence and foresight. He works with a rhythm that's almost meditative. Cut, trim, position, lash. His hands move with certainty, no hesitation, as if the shelter is already built in his mind, and he's simply making it visible. You realize this is what 15 years looks like. Not just knowledge, but knowledge become instinct. Knowledge in the muscles and the bones. And you notice something else. The way he tests each joint before moving to the next. The way he stands back, occasionally squinting at angles, checking sight lines. He's not just building a shelter. He's building something that will hold against wind from the northwest, that will shed snow without collapsing, that will reflect fire heat without catching flame. He's building something that anticipates every way winter might try to kill you. The wood he chooses is specific. He ignores the rotting cottonwood near the stream. It's soft and holds moisture. He goes for the standing dead lodgepole pines, grey ghosts, he calls them. The wood is seasoned dry and surprisingly hard. It rings when he strikes it with the back of his hatchet. He strips the branches, creating smooth poles. He uses the stripped boughs for the bedding and the roof thatch, weaving them together with a density that surprises you. Need it thick, he grunts. Thick enough so you can't see daylight through it. If light can get in, wind can get in. He layers the boughs like shingles, tips pointing down, so the melting snow will run off the outside rather than dripping onto your face. It is a primitive waterproofing system, ancient and effective. He builds methodically, cutting poles, setting them. You help where you can, but mostly you're learning to read the logic of it. Why the roof slopes just so. Why the opening faces south. Why every joint is secured against wind. It takes hours. Your hands are raw. Your back aches. But gradually, the shelter takes shape. 3 walls, a roof, an opening to the south. When you're done, there's a space maybe 10 feet by 8 feet. Gabe walks around the structure one more time, pulling on joints, testing the roof, checking every lashing. He's not satisfied with good enough. It has to be right, because good enough means you wake up with snow in your face or the shelter collapsed on top of you. You see how I positioned the smoke hole? He points to a deliberate gap between the roof and the back wall. Can't seal it completely, or smoke fills the shelter and suffocates you, but can't make it too big, or all your heat escapes. It's a balance. Everything out here is balance. He shows you how the bark shingles overlap, how water will run down and out rather than through. How the roof angle is steep enough to shed snow, but not so steep that wind gets under it and lifts it off. Every design choice has a reason. Multiple reasons, each one the difference between comfort and misery, between survival and death. Next time, you'll build this, he says. I'll watch. By spring, you should be able to put one up in 3 hours. Good enough to keep you alive anyway. Won't be pretty, but pretty doesn't matter out here. Effective matters. There's a lesson in this beyond shelter building. He's telling you that perfection isn't the goal. Functional is the goal. Alive is the goal. Everything else is luxury, and luxury is something you can't afford. He checks the ground inside the shelter, feeling for any slope that might cause water to pool any rocks that will make sleeping impossible. He finds a few stones, digs them out with his knife, tosses them aside. He's making your bed before you even think about it, clearing the space where you'll rest, making it as comfortable as the circumstances allow. You realize this is another form of care. Not the care of your mother fluffing pillows and tucking blankets, but the care of someone who knows that sleep is recovery, that recovery is strength, that strength is survival. He's not making you comfortable for comfort's sake. He's making you comfortable because your life depends on it. Gabe builds a fire just beyond the opening, positioning it carefully. You watch him adjust it several times until he's satisfied. The heat needs to reflect into the shelter without the flames catching the roof. Then he does something you don't expect. He takes pine boughs, cuts them thick, and lays them inside the shelter. But he doesn't lay them evenly. He builds them thickest where you'll sleep, creating a softer bed for you than for himself. You start to protest, and he cuts you off with a look. "You're still soft," he says. "Your body hasn't learned to ignore the ground yet. Mine has." He weaves the boughs into a spring mattress of sorts, placing the curved side of the branches up, creating a layer of air beneath you. This air gap is crucial. It insulates you from the frozen earth, which is a limitless heat sink. If you sleep directly on the ground, the earth will suck the heat out of your body all night long, no matter how many blankets you have on top. The pine needles release their scent as he crushes them into place. A burst of fresh green smell in the dusty air. It smells like Christmas back home, a jarring association that makes your chest ache for a moment. But you push it down. There is no Christmas here. Only the pine, the dirt, and the coming night. It's not kindness. Not exactly. It's pragmatism. If you don't sleep, you'll be useless tomorrow. But there's something underneath the pragmatism. Something that feels like what your mother used to do, putting an extra blanket on your bed without being asked. By the time you're finished, the sun is low. You collapse onto the pine boughs, and despite everything, they feel like luxury. Gabe hands you jerky. Again, you notice his portion is smaller. Again, he acts as if this is normal, unremarkable. "This shelter will hold," he says. And you understand, he's not just talking about the structure. He's talking about your ability to help build it, to work through the afternoon, to be useful. You're learning. Slower than I'd like, but you're learning. From Gabe, this is practically affection. The fire burns. The night settles in. And for the first time since leaving St. Louis, you sleep in something that feels almost like shelter, almost like home. But more than that, you sleep knowing someone else is awake. Keeping watch. Keeping the fire alive. Keeping you alive through another night in the mountains. You don't have words for what this means yet. Won't have words for it for years. But lying there in the darkness, listening to Gabe move quietly around the fire, you understand something fundamental has shifted. You're not alone out here. And being not alone in this landscape that wants you dead makes all the difference. The fire crackles. Sparks rise into darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, Gabe adds another log patient as the mountains themselves keeping watch while you sleep. The work begins before darkness falls. You're learning this now. Nighttime isn't something that happens to you. It's something you prepare for methodically, like a ritual. Gabe has you gathering wood in the last light. Not just any wood, specific pieces, kindling, medium branches, large logs. He's teaching you to think ahead, to see the whole night before it arrives. "Don't just grab," he murmurs, stopping your hand as you reach for a fallen branch. "Feel it. If it's heavy, it's wet. If it's light, it's rot. You want the wood that rings when you tap it." He moves with a slowness that feels almost ceremonial. He runs his mittened hand along the bark of a standing dead pine, reading the texture like braille. He breaks a twig, listening to the snap. A sharp, clear crack means dry fuel. A dull thud means moisture. It is a library of sensation he is teaching you. You watch his fingers trace the bark, and there's something mesmerizing about the way he works. The rough texture of dead pine makes a soft scratching sound under his gloves, a whisper of wood against leather. He picks up a branch, weighs it in his palm, and you can hear the subtle creak as he tests its density. Snap. The sound is sharp and clean, echoing slightly in the cold air. Good wood. He hands you a piece. Listen, he says. You tap it with your knuckle. The wood rings back a hollow musical note. That's a night's worth of heat right there, Gabe says. Wood talks if you listen. Dense wood rings high and clear. Rot sounds dead muffled. Wet wood sounds heavy dull. You begin to understand that gathering wood is not a chore. It's a conversation with the forest. Each piece tells a story. How long it's been dead, whether it weathered through rain or stayed dry under other trees, whether bugs have gotten into it and turned it to powder. Gabe shows you how to strip bark with your knife. The soft, tearing sound as it peels away in long strips. This is your kindling, he says. The inner bark is papery dry, perfect for catching the first flames. The sound of tearing bark becomes rhythmic, almost musical. Tear strip fold, tear strip fold. He collects pine needles next, scraping them into a pile with the side of his boot, a soft, brushing whisper. Best starter there is, he says. Full of resin, burns hot and fast. The needles are crispy, releasing their scent when crushed, that sharp green smell of pine oil. You work together in near silence, and the sounds create their own language. The crunch of your boots on frozen ground, the snap of branches breaking, the rustle of pine needles being gathered, the soft thud as logs are stacked. It's a symphony of preparation, each sound a promise of warmth to come. The work is meditative. Your mind empties of everything except the task. Find dry wood. Test it. Stack it. The repetitive motion becomes soothing. Reach, test, snap, stack. Reach, test, snap, stack. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm. The anxiety of the cold fades, replaced by focus. He rejects 10 pieces for every one he keeps. You watch him find a perfect length of seasoned heartwood, dense, dry, packed with potential heat. It's the kind of log that will burn slow and hot for an hour. He weighs it in his hand, nods, and then, without looking at you, he places it on your pile, not his. It's a silent gift. He is giving you the best heat for the deepest part of the night, reserving the quicker burning, smokier wood for himself. This one, he points to the heartwood, is for when the moon is high. That's when the cold bites hardest. Don't waste it early. He stacks the wood near the shelter entrance, organizing it by size, creating a library of warmth you can access in the dark without thinking. Build a fire that feeds itself, he says, positioning logs in a structure that seems almost architectural. See how these are laid. As the bottom ones burn down, the ones on top fall into place. You watch how he angles them, how he leaves space for air while keeping the wood close enough that each piece ignites the next. It's beautiful in a way. Form-following function. Water comes next. Gabe has you fill everything you have. Tin cup water skin the pot. You make trips to the creek as the last light bleeds away. The water is shockingly cold, making your hands ache. Come January. Gabe says, getting water means breaking through ice. Better to have it when you can. You watch the water level in the pot. It trembles slightly, not from heat, but from the microcurrents of the wind and the subtle vibrations of the earth. This water is snowmelt filtered through miles of granite scree. It has no taste, which is a taste in itself. Pure, cold neutrality. It is the lifeblood of the mountains. Gabe takes a sip, holding it in his mouth to warm it before swallowing. "Don't gulp ice water," he warns. "It drops your core temp, shocks the stomach. Sip it, warm it, then swallow." Even drinking is a discipline here. Inside the shelter, Gabe arranges his bedding with care. His blanket over the bows, his rifle within reach, his shooting bag as a pillow, everything positioned deliberately. Then he checks his feet. You've seen him do this every night, but tonight he makes sure you're watching. "Your feet keep you alive out here," he says. "Lose a toe to frostbite, you lose your mobility. Lose your mobility, you're dead." He examines each foot carefully, looking for blisters, redness, cracks in the skin. It's intimate in a way that makes you uncomfortable, but you understand the necessity of it. "Check yours," he says. You do. Your feet are pale, slightly swollen, red marks where the boots have rubbed. Gabe glances over. "You'll want moccasins soon. I'll show you when we get a good hide." The thought of making your own footwear still seems impossible. But then again, so did building this shelter yesterday morning. While you examine your feet, Gabe does something you almost miss. He takes a small piece of tallow from his pack and works it into the leather of your boots, paying special attention to the seams where water might seep in. His fingers work the grease into every crack, every stitch. He doesn't ask permission, doesn't draw attention to what he's doing, just does it the way you might breathe automatically because it needs doing. When you notice, you start to thank him, but he's already moved on, checking the shelter's roof testing, where the bark overlaps, making sure no gaps will let in snow when it comes. While your clothes dry by the fire, Gabe cooks. Chunks of elk meat impaled on green sticks propped over the flames. The smell makes your stomach clench with hunger. When it's ready, he hands you the larger piece. Again, every time the larger piece. "Eat slow," he says. "Eat too fast, your stomach will cramp." The meat is barely cooked through, but it's hot and it's protein, and your body is desperate for both. You chew slowly, making it last. The flavor is gamey rich with the iron of the animal's blood. It is tough, requiring serious work from your jaw, but the juices are hot and salty. You can feel the protein hitting your system almost instantly, a wave of energy that clears the fog in your brain. You savor the texture, the resistance of the muscle fibers. It connects you to the animal, to the land it grazed on, to the energy it stored from the summer sun, now transferring into your own body. It is a communion of survival. When the food is gone, you both step to the edge of firelight. Urinating in the darkness with unknown wilderness stretching away makes you feel vulnerable in a way you've never experienced before. Back at the shelter, Gabe is spreading his blanket. He's positioned himself so his head is toward the opening where he can see anything that might approach. The rifle right there, the knife on his left side. "One more thing," he says. He unties a small cloth bag from his belt. From it, he takes tinder and char cloth, fire-starting material. "Keep this on you always," he says, handing you a similar bundle. "If you're separated from your gear, if everything goes to hell, you need to be able to make fire. This and your knife. Those two things can keep you alive when nothing else will." You tuck it into your shirt, feeling it press against your chest, warm from his body heat. It's a small thing, this bundle. But out here, small things become enormous. The difference between life and death fits in the palm of your hand. You arrange your bedding, copying his method. Everything you own within arm's reach. This is security now. Not locked doors or bank accounts. Just keeping track of your few possessions, because losing any of them could kill you. Gabe adds several large logs to the fire, building it high. Heat pours into the shelter. For a few minutes, it's almost too warm. Sleep when you can, he says, lying down. Tomorrow, we start working the trap line. He pulls his hat down over his eyes. You lie back on your pine boughs, pull your blanket up. The shelter holds the warmth better than last night's open camp. The ground is still hard, but the cold creeps in less aggressively. Through the shelter opening, you can see the fire, and beyond it, the massive darkness. The stars are visible, that same overwhelming profusion of light. The fire crackles. Somewhere far off, an owl calls. You think about your bed back home, the feather mattress, clean sheets, your mother heating bricks in the stove to warm the bed, the lamp with its steady light, the certainty that morning would come with breakfast, comfort, safety. All of that is gone now. You chose to leave it, though you're beginning to wonder if you understood what you were choosing. You thought you were trading comfort for adventure. You didn't realize you were trading one entire way of being human for another. Gabe's breathing has already deepened, but you notice he's not completely asleep. His hand rests on his rifle. His body is positioned to wake at any unusual sound. Even in rest, he's keeping you both alive. The fire shifts, sending up sparks. They rise into darkness like reverse stars. You watch them through barely open eyes, feeling sleep finally pull at you. The cold presses in from all sides. But here in this small shelter, with this carefully tended fire, with this man who divides the food unequally because your body needs more, you're warm enough. Warm enough. And somehow, impossibly, that's enough. You sleep. You don't fall asleep so much as slip between states. One moment, you're aware of the fire's warmth, the ground beneath your hip. The next, you're somewhere else, entirely, not quite dreaming, but not quite awake. This is wilderness sleep. Your body rests, but some part of your brain remains on guard, processing sounds, registering changes, monitoring the fire. There's a psychological shift that happens in the deep wilderness night that you're only beginning to understand. Back in St. Louis, night meant safety. It meant retreating indoors, locking doors, lighting lamps. Night was controlled, domesticated, made safe by walls and civilization. Out here, night is when the wild truly wakes up. And some part of your primitive brain knows this responds to it with an alertness that won't let you fully rest. You're experiencing what your ancestors felt every night for hundreds of thousands of years. That you are not alone in the darkness. That you share this world with things that hunt when the sun goes down. Your hearing has become preternaturally acute. You can hear your own heartbeat, the rush of blood in your ears. You can hear Gabe's breathing, the slight change in rhythm that tells you he's checking the fire without waking. You can hear the minute settling of logs in the fire, the hiss of sap, the pop of a pocket of moisture exploding. And beneath it all, you're aware of your own mortality in a way you've never been before. Every night out here is a negotiation with death. Every morning you wake up is a small victory. This awareness changes something fundamental in how you experience consciousness. You're more present, more aware, because being unaware could mean not waking up. There's a strange beauty in this heightened state. Colors seem more vivid in firelight. Sounds have texture and weight. Even the cold feels more real, more honest than anything you experienced in your former life. You're living at the edge of your capacity, and paradoxically, this makes you feel more alive than you've ever felt. You think about the people back in St. Louis sleeping in their safe beds, and you realize you couldn't explain this to them. How fear and cold and exhaustion can strip away everything unnecessary until all that's left is this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. How that reduction can feel like clarity rather than deprivation. Gabe understands this. You can see it in the way he moves through the world, present to everything attached to nothing. He's been living at this edge for so long that he can't go back, and you're beginning to understand why. Once you've felt this alive, how do you return to sleepwalking through a safe, comfortable life? The paradox is that this aliveness comes from being constantly aware of death. Every decision matters. Every moment counts. There's no room for the mental clutter that filled your head back home. Social anxieties, petty resentments, future worries. Out here, there's only now, only this fire, only staying warm enough to see another sunrise. You're being forged into something different. Not better or worse, but fundamentally changed. The person who returns to St. Louis, if you return, will not be the person who left. That person is dying here, piece by piece, replaced by someone harder, simpler, more essential. The fire sounds different at night. In daylight, it's just crackling. But in darkness, each pop becomes individual, distinct. Sap pockets burst with sounds like distant gunshots. The logs settle as they burn, and the whole structure sighs like something alive. You surface to these sounds, orient yourself, sink back down. Not alarm, just your mind cataloguing what's normal. The creek provides another layer. Water over stones, constant and unchanging. White noise that should soothe, but tonight it sounds too loud, and you find yourself wondering what moves there in darkness. Gabe shifts in his sleep, and you realize he's adding wood to the fire without fully waking. His hand reaches out, finds a log by touch, places it precisely where it needs to go. The fire flares brighter, then settles. He's asleep again before you've finished processing what happened. You watch the steam of your own breath rise. In the firelight, it looks like a white spirit escaping your body rhythmically with every exhalation. It is the only visual proof that you are alive in this frozen void. The air outside the shelter is not just cold, it is still. A stillness so profound it feels heavy, pressing against your eardrums. You realize lying there that you are a prey animal. Back in the city, you were the master of your environment. Here you are, soft flesh in a world of teeth and claws. The darkness beyond the firelight isn't empty. It is watching, and the sounds grow as the temperature drops. The trees themselves begin to speak. You hear a loud crack like a rifle shot echoing through the valley. It's the frost splitting a pine tree, the sap freezing and expanding until the wood simply bursts. Then another further off. The forest is exploding in slow motion. The logs on the fire groan a low, mournful sound as the heat forces moisture from their core. Even the creek sounds different now, sharper metallic, as ice begins to form along the banks, changing the acoustics of the water. Every sound is magnified by the cold air, crisp and terrifyingly close. A branch rubbing against another sounds like a footstep. A falling pine cone sounds like a weapon being cocked. Your mind spins these noises into threats, painting monsters in the negative space between the trees. You hear the snapping of a twig, not the wind, something with weight. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic caged bird. The sound is terrifyingly loud in the silence. Your imagination populates the shadows with bears, with wolves, with things that have no names. You freeze your muscles, locking up your breath held in your throat. And then movement. Not from the dark, from Gabe. He doesn't leap up. He doesn't grab his rifle in panic. He simply opens his eyes. He looks at you, not at the darkness, but at you. He sees the terror in your wide eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he reaches out and places a hand on your arm. The weight of his hand is heavy, warm grounding. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The pressure of his palm says, I hear it too. It is not a threat. Breathe. He holds his hand there until he feels your muscles loosen, until you exhale. Then he sits up, slow and lazy, and tosses another log onto the fire. The sparks swirl up orange fireflies dancing against the black pine boughs. He creates light. He creates warmth. He pushes back the monsters with a piece of pine wood. Just a deer. He whispers. His voice is gravelly and sleep barely louder than the fire. The calm in his voice anchors you. He doesn't lay back down immediately. Instead, he shifts his position, placing himself more fully between you and the open darkness. He picks up a long stick and banks the coals, building a small wall of heat that reflects directly onto you. He is curating the fire, not just for survival, but for your comfort. He looks at you again, his face illuminated by the fresh flames, and gives a microscopic nod. A silent promise. I have the watch. You feel the tension drain out of your shoulders, replaced by a heavy narcotic gratitude. You try to remember the last time you slept through an entire night. It must have been back in St. Louis. Before you understood that uninterrupted sleep is a luxury of civilization. A branch snaps somewhere in the darkness beyond the fire. You're instantly awake. Your hand finds the knife without thought. Your breath stops, your body straining to hear more. Silence. Then something moving through underbrush. Something big enough that you can hear it displacing branches, crunching through dried leaves. Moving parallel to the camp, not toward it. You look at Gabe. His eyes are open, reflecting firelight. He's been awake the whole time. He raises one hand slowly, palm down. Stay still, stay quiet. The movement continues for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes. Then it stops. Then, after a moment that stretches taut, it starts again, moving away, now. Elk, Gabe says quietly. Young bull, probably, moving to water. Just an elk. Just an animal going about its business, as indifferent to you as the stars overhead. Everything sounds bigger in the dark, Gabe says. No mockery, just fact. Your imagination makes monsters. Usually it's just something trying to survive, same as you. Usually. He doesn't define the exceptions. Doesn't need to. The monsters are real enough. Just not as common as fear suggests. You try to settle back, but it's harder now. Your body is humming with adrenaline. You're aware of every sound, every shift in wind, every change in the fire. You drift again, but the cold wakes you. It has found a way under your blanket. You curl tighter, shivering. Before you can even move to fix it, you hear the sound, the soft thump of wood on ash. Gabe is awake again. He is tending the fire again. How many times has he done this tonight? 3, 5. You watch him through slitted eyes. He moves like a part of the landscape. He adjusts a log that has rolled too far. He banks the coals to direct the heat toward you. He is the keeper of the warmth. He takes the burden of the night onto himself, so you don't have to. He notices you watching. "Go back under," he murmurs. It's a command, but it's gentle. He pokes the fire and a wave of new heat rolls over you, smelling of pine resin and smoke. It wraps around you like a second blanket. You realize he hasn't really slept. He has been riding the edge of consciousness all night, tethered to the fire, tethered to your safety. He is the wall between you and the freezing death waiting just outside the ring of light. This is intimacy. Not the intimacy of lovers, but the intimacy of survival. The knowledge that another human being is spending their life, force, minute by minute, to keep your heart beating. The fire crackles. The sparks fly up and vanish. The rhythm of his care lulls you. The fear recedes, replaced by a deep, primitive gratitude. Time becomes strange. You might sleep for 5 minutes or 50. Each time you surface, you check the fire first. If it's still strong, you can rest. You add a log, carefully, trying not to disturb the structure Gabe built. The wood catches quickly, and the additional heat feels good. You notice the temperature has dropped significantly. Your breath is visible now, ghostly white in firelight. From somewhere far away comes a sound that stops your heart. High, wavering, inhuman. A scream that turns into a coughing roar echoing off unseen cliffs. "Cougar," Gabe says. He hasn't moved. Mile away at least. Sound carries strange at night. It's hunting. Not interested in us. A mile should feel safe. But you remember stories about how silent cougars are when they want to be. About how they drop from trees onto the backs of deer, of horses, of men who thought they were safe. "Stop thinking," Gabe says. "You're making yourself afraid. Fear uses energy, and you need that for tomorrow. The cat's not coming here. We've got fire. We smell like humans. There's easier prey out there. Trust me." He reaches out one more time, not to the fire, but to the air between you. He holds his hand there, palm open to the flame, catching the warmth and seemingly pushing it toward you. "I'm not sleeping," he whispers, "so you can." And that is the simple, terrifying truth of it. He is trading his rest for yours. He is metabolizing his own exhaustion to buy you dreams. You watch his profile against the flames, the unmoving stoicism of his face. And for the first time, you don't just feel safe. You feel cherished. In a rough, silent mountain way, you are being loved. Trust him. You must sleep eventually, because the next time you're aware, the quality of darkness has changed. Not lighter, but different. Thinner. Pre-dawn. The coldest part of night. The fire is low now, more coals than flames. You add wood blowing gently. The flames respond reluctantly, tired of fighting the cold. Gabe sits up, stretches carefully. "Another hour to dawn," he says. "Good time to check the perimeter." He stands, takes his rifle, walks a slow circle around camp just beyond firelight. You watch him move, noting how he reads the ground even in this dimness. When he returns, he nods once. Clean. Clean means you survived another night. Clean means you can start another day. Clean is a small victory you're learning to appreciate. The sky to the east is definitely lighter now. Not sunrise yet, but coming. The stars are fading. The forest is waking. Birds beginning their morning calls. The whole world shifting from nocturnal to diurnal rhythms. You think about the night you just endured. Not enjoyed. Not even exactly survived. Just endured. Made it through. Came out the other side still breathing. And you realize that this is what the next 5 months will be like. longer nights as winter deepens, colder nights as seasons turn, harder nights as exhaustion accumulates. Gabe is right. Fear uses energy, and you can't afford to waste energy on what might happen. You need every bit for what is happening, for staying alive, for the daily negotiation with cold and hunger and distance. The sun breaks over the eastern ridgeline, and light spills into the valley like something physical. The frost covering everything sparkles, suddenly transforming the landscape into something beautiful, crystalline. Beautiful. But under the beauty is cold. Under the sparkle is ice. And ice is just another word for what wants you dead. Time to work, Gabe says. You stand stiff and sore despite the hours of rest. You're learning that tired is just how you feel now. It's not something that goes away. It's cumulative, and you'll carry it until when you don't know. But the sun is up, and there's work to do. And the night is over. For now, but tonight will come again. And the night after that. And Gabe will keep watch. Will keep the fire alive. Will keep you both alive through another darkness. This is what care looks like in the wilderness. Not words, not comfort, just presence, just competence, just the quiet determination to see another dawn. By mid-morning, you're standing waist-deep in water, so cold your legs have gone numb. Complete absence of sensation, as if your legs belong to someone else. Gabe is upstream setting traps with the efficiency of long practice. The beaver trap in your hands weighs maybe 5 pounds all iron and tension. Drop one in the creek and you've lost real money. The beaver trap is a marvel of brutal engineering. 2 semicircular jaws each, lined with teeth connected by a powerful spring. When set, the spring holds maybe 100 pounds of pressure. When triggered, those jaws snap shut in a fraction of a second. Fast enough to catch a beaver's leg. Fast enough to shatter bone. Gabe has shown you the mechanism a dozen times, but handling it in freezing water with numb fingers is entirely different from practicing on dry land. The trap has to be positioned just right on the underwater trail beavers use when entering and leaving their lodge. Too shallow, and they'll avoid it. Too deep, and it won't trigger properly. Feel for the trail with your boot, Gabe calls. Beavers are creatures of habit. They use the same paths every time. Once you find it, you'll feel the packed mud smoother than the rest of the creek bed. You shuffle your feet, slowly searching. There is a subtle change in texture under your boot. The trail. Setting the trap requires a specific sequence. First, you press down on the springs, with both hands compressing them until the jaws open. Your hands are so cold they're barely responding, and the pressure required makes your arms shake. One slip, and those jaws snap shut on your fingers. You've seen the scars on Gabe's hands, white lines across his palms, where traps have caught him over the years. Once the jaws are open, you position the trigger pan carefully. This is the plate the beaver will step on. It has to be sensitive enough to trigger under the weight of a beaver, but not so sensitive that creek current will set it off. Then comes the camouflage. You spread mud and creek debris over the trap, making it invisible. But not too much. If the trigger pan is buried under too much sediment, it won't work. Finally, the float stick. This gets attached to the trap chain and driven into the creek bed at an angle pointing toward deeper water. When a beaver is caught, its instinct is to dive for deep water. The float stick lets it do that, but ensures the trap stays submerged. The beaver drowns quickly, which is more humane than it struggling on land and keeps the pelt from being damaged by predators. It's a harsh economy you're learning. Every step is calculated for efficiency, catching the beaver, preserving the pelt, maximizing profit. There's no room for sentiment, no space for guilt. The beaver is a resource, its fur worth money, that will keep you alive through winter. Gabe has explained the larger economics. A prime beaver pelt might fetch $5 at Rendezvous. Your outfit, rifle traps, powder-lead food cost the company maybe $200. You're expected to bring back 40 pelts just to break even. Anything beyond that is profit split with the company. But the real cost isn't counted in dollars. It's counted in hands destroyed by freezing water, in backs bent from endless labor, in the slow accumulation of exhaustion that grinds men down until they're just hollow husks going through motions. Your fingers are so cold, you can barely manipulate the trap spring. You push down on it, trying to set it, but you keep losing your grip, and each time the trap snaps shut with a sound like a gunshot. "Slower," Gabe calls. Cold makes you want to hurry, but hurry makes mistakes. Breathe. Focus. You force yourself to slow down. Breathe. Focus. The trap is just a machine. This time the jaws open fully. You set the trigger, lower it carefully to the creek bed, position it on the trail. Then you camouflage it, making it invisible. "Good," Gabe says, materializing beside you. "That'll catch. Now get out before you lose your feet." You wade toward shore, and the current that seemed negligible now feels strong. Your legs won't respond properly. You stumble, and Gabe's hand catches your arm, steadying you. On the bank, you collapse. Gabe is already building a small fire. Within minutes, he has flames going. "Strip," he says. "What?" "Your pants. They're soaked. Get them off, warm your legs. You're no good to anyone with frostbitten feet." You do as he says, too cold to be modest. The air on your wet skin feels even colder than the water, but then the fire's heat reaches you, and it's like being alive again. Gabe hands you dried meat. "Eat. Restore your heat." While your pants dry, Gabe talks. This is rare enough that you pay attention. "I came out here in 16, he says, staring into the fire. "I was younger than you thought I was going to make my fortune and go home rich. That was the year the mountain got crowded. Everybody chasing beaver like it would last forever." He spits into the fire. "Met my first winter that year. December up near the Three Forks. Blackfeet caught us in a snowstorm. Killed 3 men before we even knew they were there. Silent as ghosts, deadly as winter itself." He feeds the fire methodical. "I've seen men go crazy from the loneliness. Seen them walk away from camp one morning and just keep walking straight into the wilderness. Never hear from them again. Seen men weep for their mothers when the cold gets bad. Seen men kill each other over insults that wouldn't matter in civilization." "Why do you stay?" you ask. He's quiet for a long moment. "Because I can't go back. That's what nobody understands. They think we're out here because we love it, because we're free. Maybe at first. But after enough years, you become this." He gestures at himself. The buckskins, the long hair, the beard. You become too rough for polite society, too quiet for conversation, too used to space and silence to live in a city again. "So, you're trapped here?" "No." He looks at you sharply. "I chose this. Every season I choose it again, but it's a choice that costs. Every year I stay, I lose more of who I was. But I gain something too. Understanding maybe, or purpose. Out here life is simple. Not easy, but simple. You work, you survive, or you don't. There's clarity in that. He pauses, and for the first time you see something in his face. Not sadness exactly, something deeper, a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. Had a partner once, he says, and his voice is quieter now. Name was Thomas. Better trapper than me. Better shot. Better everything. We worked together 5 years. Then one winter he fell through ice. I pulled him out, got him to shore, built a fire, did everything right. But the cold had already gotten into his lungs. He lasted 3 days. Gabe is quiet for a moment. Those 3 days. Gabe continues, his voice so low you have to lean in to hear. I did everything I could think of. Kept the fire roaring hot. Wrapped him in every blanket we had. Made him drink hot water mixed with whiskey. Held him when the shaking got so bad he couldn't hold himself. Second night he was burning with fever, talking to people who weren't there. His mother, a girl back in Kentucky he'd been sweet on. He thought he was home, thought it was summer. Kept asking why I had the stove going so hot when it was already warm out. Third morning he woke up clear-headed, knew what was happening. That's when he made me promise. Said, Gabe, don't you go back. Don't you let them forget this. I asked him what he meant. He said, somebody's got to remember that we were out here, that we tried to live different, that we cared about something more than money and what people thought. Gabe picks up a stick, pokes at the fire. I held his hand when he died, buried him in a spot where he could see the mountains, built a cairn so I could find it again, though I never have. That was 15 years ago this December, and every greenhorn I teach, every fire I keep alive, every time I give somebody the bigger piece of meat, I'm keeping that promise. He looks at you then. So when I teach you to set a trap, I'm not just teaching you. I'm honoring Thomas. When I keep watch while you sleep, I'm doing what I couldn't do for him. And when spring comes and you decide whether to stay or go, you'll be carrying a piece of what we were out here, what we tried to be. He stands, kicks dirt over the small fire. Come on, 6 more traps to set. But as you wade back into the creek, everything feels different now. Gabe isn't just teaching you to trap beaver. He's keeping a promise to a dead man. He's preserving something that's already disappearing. He's caring for you the way he couldn't care for Thomas, keeping you alive through the winter that killed his friend. By evening, when you've set all 8 traps, you're beyond cold. You're hollow, empty, as if the creek has washed away everything except the bare minimum needed to keep your heart beating. Back at camp, Gabe builds up the fire, and you both sit wrapped in blankets, shivering uncontrollably. The shivering is good, Gabe says. Means your body is still fighting. When it stops, that's when you're in trouble. Eventually, warmth returns. Your core temperature stabilizes. You're alive, functional. Tomorrow, we check the sets, Gabe says, and then the real work begins. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in impossible colors. Gold and rose and purple reflected in the creek that nearly killed you today. Gabe is right. The mountain doesn't care. The water doesn't care. The cold doesn't care. But Gabe cares. He cares enough to pull you from the water, to build this fire, to share his food, to teach you not just how to survive, but why survival matters. Because someone has to remember, someone has to keep the promise, someone has to keep watch while others sleep. And tonight, as you drift into exhaustion, you understand finally that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying human, about keeping the small gestures alive. about remembering that in the coldest nights, the only fire that really matters is the one we keep for each other. 3 weeks pass, maybe 4. Time is measured differently now, in beaver pelts accumulating, in the gradual descent of snowline, in the steady contraction of daylight. The trap line is producing 23 pelts so far. Each one represents money somewhere far away in a world that's beginning to feel dreamlike. You've learned things. Your hands know how to skin a beaver now without thinking. You can flesh a pelt working the hide until it's clean. Your fingers are cut, scarred, permanently stained, but they work. Today, Gabe is teaching you something new. He's killed a deer, a young doe. Now it's back at camp, and Gabe is showing you what comes next. The hide, he says, keeps you alive all winter. He works the hide free with practiced movements. When it's off, he spreads it on the ground, flesh side up. The Indians taught us this, Gabe says. Every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide. He takes the deer's skull, cracks it open, scoops out the brain matter, mixes it with warm water into a paste. The brain matter looks like grey porridge in Gabe's hands. There's something deeply strange about this process, something that connects you to practices that go back to the Stone Age. Humans have been tanning hides this way for tens of thousands of years. The brain contains lecithin. Gabe explains working the paste. It's what breaks down the proteins in the hide, makes it soft. Nature's chemistry. 1 deer brain is exactly enough to tan 1 deer hide. Isn't that something? You watch him work the brain mixture into the flesh side of the hide, his fingers kneading it in circular motions, working it deep into the fibers. The smell is earthy, organic, not unpleasant. It's the smell of transformation, of death becoming something useful. You got to be thorough, he says. Miss a spot, and that part stays stiff, useless. Every inch needs the brain. This isn't quick work. This is hours of work, but it's the difference between a hide that lasts 1 winter and one that lasts 5. After the brain mixture has been worked in completely, the hide needs to rest. Gabe rolls it up, sets it aside near the fire where it will stay warm, but not hot. Tomorrow, we work it, he says. That's when the real labor starts. The next day, Gabe has you help him pull and stretch the hide. You each take an end and work it back and forth, pulling, stretching, working the fibers. Your arms burn within minutes. Your back aches. But you keep going because Gabe keeps going, and stopping means the hide stiffens and you have to start over. Feel it changing, Gabe asks. Feel how it's getting softer. You do. Under your hands, the hide is transforming. What was stiff and board-like is becoming supple, pliable. You're feeling the chemistry happen in real time, the proteins breaking down the structure of the hide, reorganizing itself. This is alchemy, you realize. Not the medieval fantasy of turning lead to gold, but real alchemy, taking one substance and transforming it into something entirely different through knowledge and labor. Hours pass. Your hands are raw. Your shoulders scream. But the hide continues to improve. Gabe shows you how to test it. Stretch it. See if it bounces back or stays extended. The more it stays extended, the softer it's becoming. This is where most men quit, Gabe says. This is where it gets hard. But this is also where you're actually creating something. The brain does part of the work, but this, he gestures at the stretching, this is you forcing the hide to become what you need it to be. By evening, the hide has been transformed. What started as a stiff, raw skin is now soft buckskin, almost buttery to the touch. You can bunch it in your hand and it flows like fabric. Last step, Gabe says, and he builds a smouldering fire using green wood and damp pine needles. The smoke is thick, white, pungent. He suspends the hide over this smoke, letting it bathe in the thick clouds. The smoke tans the hide permanently, he explains. Without this, the hide will stiffen again if it gets wet. The smoke locks in the softness, makes it water-resistant. It's the final transformation. As the hide smokes, it turns a golden tan color, beautiful and warm. The smell of smoked hide is rich, complex part. Wood smoke, part. Leather part. Something else entirely. That's buckskin, Gabe says with satisfaction. That's what keeps you alive out here. Without this, the hide dries hard as wood. With it, you get buckskin. You watch him work. It's intimate, this work. Ancient. Something humans have done for thousands of years, turning death into warmth. This is how the old ones survived, Gabe says eventually. Not by fighting the cold, by learning from it, by understanding that every creature out here has something to teach. The beaver taught us where to find water in drought. The deer taught us how to dress warm. The bear taught us when to rest. The wolves taught us how to work together. He pauses in his work, looking at the hide. The Indians, they don't see animals the way we do. They see them as teachers, as relatives. When you take a deer, you're not just taking meat and hide. You're taking a gift that was offered, and you honor that gift by using every part, by learning what it has to teach you. And in that silence, you understand that the Rocky Mountains have a way of stripping down a man until only the essential parts remain. That afternoon, Gabe teaches you about flint and steel, the real art of it. You can make fire, he says, but can you make it in a blizzard? He demonstrates with materials that seem impossible. Damp bark, half-frozen char cloth, but he gets flame nursing it from spark to smoke to burning. The secret, he says, is patience. Patience is what keeps you alive. Not strength, not luck. Patience. You practice until your knuckles are raw. The angle matters. The force matters. Everything matters. That evening, as you're drying by the fire, you remember the pocket watch. Your father's watch. Gold-cased, expensive. A marker of civilization. You haven't wound it in weeks. The hands are stopped at 3:47. Gabe glances over. Still carrying that. It was my father's. What's it good for out here? You don't have an answer. It tells time, but time is irrelevant. It's valuable, but there's nowhere to spend its value. It weighs 4 ounces, Gabe says. That's 4 ounces of lead you could carry. Everything out here is cost and benefit. He pauses, then says something unexpected. I had a watch once, silver. My father gave it to me when I left Pennsylvania. Carried it for 2 years out here, keeping track of time, winding it every night like it mattered. Then one winter, I was starving, hadn't eaten in 3 days, and I traded it to a Crow woman for a piece of dried buffalo. He looks at the fire. Best trade I ever made. That buffalo kept me alive till spring. The watch would have just been metal on a corpse. Took me a long time to understand that. Took me even longer to stop missing it. He looks at you then. Keep it if you want. I'm not saying throw it away. I'm saying think about what you value and why. The mountains show you what matters and what's just weight. That night, you hold the watch while the fire burns. 3 generations of civilized time measured in regular increments, contained in golden wheels and springs. But out here, time isn't measured in hours. It's measured in survival, in care given and received. in small gestures that mean everything. The watch is still there in your pack. But something about it has changed. Or maybe what's changed is you. You're learning that the most valuable things can't be carried. They're the knowledge Gabe shares, the extra portion of food he gives you, the way he keeps watch while you sleep. These things have no weight, but they're what keeps you alive. Outside, the wind picks up. Inside the shelter, the fire burns, and you sleep deeply this time while Gabe tends the flames. The first snow comes in November. You wake to silence, a particular quality of silence that makes you sit up before you're fully conscious. The world has been muffled overnight, wrapped in white, transformed into something alien and beautiful and deeply threatening. Gabe is at the shelter opening, looking out. 6 inches have fallen, maybe more, and it's still coming down. "This changes things," he says. "Traplines done till spring. We head to winter quarters. Can't stay here. Not isolated. Need to join up with others." You spend the day pulling traps from the creek. 25 pelts total for the season. Good money if you can get it to rendezvous. The next morning, you break camp. Nature will reclaim the shelter, erase all evidence you were here. You load everything you own on your back. Weeks of work compressed into 50 pounds of equipment. Gabe leads the way downslope. By midday, you're out of the high country into a broader valley, and there, in a sheltered bend, you see them. Teepees, dozens of them with smoke rising. "Shoshone," Gabe says. "We'll winter with them." As you approach, you see this isn't just a Shoshone village. There are white trappers here too. The trappers have built rough cabins, half dugouts set into hillsides. People emerge. Indian women look you over, assessing. Children run. Dogs bark. Men nod to Gabe with recognition. An older trapper approaches. "Gabe, figured you'd show up. Who's the boy?" "He's learning," Gabe says. "Learn fast. Fast enough," Gabe says, and you feel unexpected warmth at this endorsement. Over the next days, you're initiated into winter quarters. It's complex, this mixture of cultures and languages. The Shoshone have their own hierarchy. The trappers have theirs. The two groups interact constantly, trading, negotiating, cooperating. There's a woman. Gabe doesn't introduce her, but she moves into the shelter with him. And you understand, this is an arrangement of long standing. She's Shoshone, maybe 30, with hands that are never still. That first night sitting in Gabe's shelter, which now feels crowded with 3 people, you watch her work. She's making moccasins, her needle moving with practiced precision. She speaks to Gabe in Shoshone, and he responds. You understand. Nothing feel excluded, but also recognize this is normal. Later, Gabe translates some. She wants to know if you can shoot, if you're brave or just stupid, if you have a woman waiting. What did you tell her? I said you're learning, that you'll make it through winter if you keep listening. Over the following weeks, you learn the rhythms of winter quarters. Days are structured around basic needs: water, firewood, food. But there's also time more than during trapping season, and this time fills with social interaction stories. Preparation for spring. There are other young men like you. You compete in shooting contests, storytelling demonstrations of skill. But the real life of the camp happens at night around the central fires. This is where the community breathes. You see trappers who haven't spoken English in months, sitting with Shoshone elders passing a pipe, speaking a pidgin language of signs and grunt and laughter. They aren't just passing time. They are knitting themselves together against the cold. You listen to stories that stretch back generations. A white man tells of the sea of waves as tall as mountains. A Shoshone grandmother tells of the coyote, the trickster spirit who shaped the valley. The stories blend, changing shape in the firelight. You realize that out here, stories are another form of warmth. They remind you that you are human, that you have a past, that there is a world beyond the snow. One night, a blizzard strikes. The wind screams like a banshee, burying the camp in drifts. For 2 days, no one leaves their shelters. But even then, the community holds. You watch as a pot of stew is passed from the Shoshone woman's fire to your shelter, and then Gabe passes a chunk of tobacco to a runner who braves the wind to take it to the next lodge. It is a web of care, invisible but strong as iron. No one hoards. No one eats alone while another starves. The storm rages outside, trying to erase you, but inside the circle of the camp, under the snow-heavy hides, there is a collective refusal to die. You share warmth. You share food. You share the stubborn will to see the sun again. On the second night of the storm, the wind is shaking the lodge poles, threatening to tear the shelter apart. The cold is a physical thing leaking through the stitching. You are huddled under your furs, shivering. Suddenly, the flap of the lodge pushes open. A swirl of snow bursts in, followed by a small figure. It's a Shoshone boy, no older than 12. He carries a bundle of dry kindling kept dry under his own tunic. He dumps it by Gabe's dying fire and looks at you. He doesn't speak. He just nods, his eyes bright in the gloom, and then ducks back out into the white hell. He didn't have to come. The wood was precious. But he came because in this valley, warmth is a shared resource. If your fire dies, the whole camp gets a little colder. That bundle of wood carried through a blizzard by a child is the strongest definition of society you have ever seen. One of them doesn't make it. A boy from Kentucky, maybe 18, goes out during a cold snap. He doesn't come back. They find him 3 days later, frozen solid, 2 miles from camp, lost in a whiteout. They bury him in ground so frozen they can barely chip out a shallow grave. There's no ceremony beyond Gabe saying a few words. That night, everyone is quiet. You all understand what this means. Winter isn't just uncomfortable, it's actively lethal. In the shelter that night, Gabe is unusually talkative. He wasn't stupid, he says, and you know he's talking about the dead boy. He just wasn't lucky. You can do everything right and still die, or you can be careless and survive. There's no justice to it, just chance and consequences. The woman says something in Shoshone, soft and sad. She's praying for him, Gabe translates, asking her spirits to guide him. You lie awake long after they're asleep. You think about social structures. Back in St. Louis, society was class, wealth, family name. Here, it's skill, experience, the complex web of debts and obligations that keep everyone alive. You're finding your place slowly. You've proven you can work, can learn, can endure. The other trappers nod to you now. Some Indian women will trade with you directly, a sign of trust. But you also understand you'll never be what Gabe is, never have his completeness in this environment. Because you remember another life, and that memory means you're always partly absent. Maybe that's okay. Maybe being divided means you can return to civilization, while Gabe has burned his bridges, has become too wild to go back. One afternoon, the Shoshone woman teaches you something. She doesn't speak English, so she shows you through gesture. how to sew moccasins properly, how to make each stitch count. She works beside you, patiently correcting without judgment, showing again when you make mistakes. There's something in the way she does this that reminds you of your mother. Not the technique, but the patience, the quiet determination that you'll learn because someone cares enough to teach you. When you finish your first moccasin, clumsy but functional, she examines it. Then she nods once and says something to Gabe. He translates. She says you have good hands, that you'll survive if you keep using them. That night, she gives you an extra helping of stew. Not much, just a little more than Gabe. And you understand this is her way of caring. Through food, through teaching, through small gestures that mean you're part of the group now worth keeping alive. The days settle into rhythm. Morning wood gathering, afternoon repairs, evening storytelling around fires. The Shoshone children teach you words in their language. You teach them to count in English. Laughter carries across the snow, improbable and precious. One evening, an old Shoshone man shares his fire with you. He doesn't speak English, but he shows you how to carve a small figure from wood. A bear rising on hind legs. His hands gnarled with age move with precision. When it's done, he presses it into your palm and closes your fingers around it. Through Gabe, he says, "So you remember spring comes, always." The wind howls outside, the shelter holds, and somewhere in the darkness the Kentucky boy lies under frozen earth. But inside, 3 people share warmth and food, and the quiet companionship of those who've chosen to face winter together. This is what community means out here. Not friendship necessarily, not love in any conventional sense, just the mutual commitment to see another spring, to keep each other alive through the darkest months, to share the burden of survival so no one has to carry it alone. Winter deepens, then holds, then finally begins to release. You mark the change in incrementally longer days, slight softening of snowpack returning birds. By March, the creek runs again. By April, the world is mud and melt and earth waking. By May, when the high country sheds its snow, Gabe announces it's time. Rendezvous is in July. We leave tomorrow. You're different now. Your body is leaner, harder, covered in scars. Your mind thinks in weather patterns, animal signs, survival calculations. Your hands are confident now with knife and hatchet and flint and steel. You say goodbye to the people you've wintered with. The Shoshone woman who taught you moccasins. The old French trapper who shared tobacco. The children who helped you learn their language. Gabe's woman stays with her people. You understand now. These arrangements are seasonal, practical. There's affection there, but it's adapted to reality. Survival requires flexibility in all things. The journey to rendezvous is everything the autumn journey was, but inverted. Instead of watching the world contract and freeze, you watch it expand and bloom. You trap as you go. Your sets are confident now. The pelts accumulate. Gabe doesn't talk much on the trail, but you've learned to read his silences. One evening, he explains. The beaver are getting harder to find, he says. We're trapping them out. Maybe we've got 2 more good seasons. Then this whole way of life will be finished. What will you do? Gabe doesn't answer, and you understand why. This is all he knows. When the beaver are gone, what use is a man whose only skills are trapping and survival? You reach rendezvous in early July. Pierre's Hole, a broad valley already filling with teepees and tents and crude shelters. Your first thought is how loud it is. After months of silence, the chaos of hundreds of people feels assaulting. Your second thought is how dirty everything is. The concentrated humanity smells of unwashed bodies and horse manure and whiskey. Gabe leads you to the trading post. You watch as pelts change hands. 47 total a good season. At an average of $5 each, that's over $200 to split. Here, it barely covers your debt to the company with a little left over for next season's outfit. You watch with growing understanding. The trappers work for a year in brutal conditions, risking their lives, and at the end, they're barely breaking even. The real money is being made by men in clean shirts who never get their hands cold. This is frontier capitalism, raw and undisguised. The men who do the work get enough to survive and keep working. The men who own the company get rich. That night, there's celebration. The whiskey flows, fires burn high. You participate, but you're watching from a strange distance. Near one of the fires, you see the company men. Well-fed, clean-shaven, comfortable. They're laughing. Barely know how to speak anymore. More animal than man. Pity them, really, but the dividends. They're talking about the trappers, about Gabe, about you, about all the men who've just made them rich. Something breaks inside you, not dramatically, just a quiet recognition. The romance of the wilderness, the freedom of the mountains, none of it was real. What's real is that you nearly died a dozen times so that men in clean shirts could profit. You walk back toward where Gabe made camp away from the chaos. And as you walk, you pull out the pocket watch. Your father's watch, the symbol of civilization and order. You look at it one last time. The tarnished case, the stopped hands, the engraving you can barely read. Then, without ceremony, you drop it. It falls into the long grass of Pierre's hole, and within seconds, you can't see where it landed. You feel lighter, not physically, but lighter in some other way, as if you've let go of the last thread connecting you to who you were. Gabe is at his small fire away from the crowds. He nods when you approach. "Couldn't take it?" he asks. "Is it always like that?" "Mostly. Men need to blow off pressure." You sit in silence. Then, "I'm not going back out next season." Gabe doesn't seem surprised. "Figured you might say that. I'll trap fall season, help you through winter, but come spring, I'm heading to St. Louis." "You'll make a poor civilized man now," Gabe says, but there's no mockery. "You've seen too much, been too cold. You won't fit there either." "Maybe not, but I can't do this forever." "No one's built for it," Gabe says quietly. "You just decide it's worth it, or you decide it's not. Both choices have costs." You can see his cost in the lines of his face, in the way he sits apart, unable to fully engage with either world. The mountains have made him into something that doesn't belong anywhere else. But you're choosing differently. You're choosing to leave while you still can. The fire burns low. The sounds of rendezvous continue in the distance. But here, in this small pocket of quiet, you and Gabe sit together. "Thank you," you say eventually, "for teaching me, for keeping me alive." Gabe grunts, uncomfortable. "You learned. That's all I asked." But you both know it was more than that. It was the extra food, the watch kept while you slept, the hand that steadied you in the creek, the promise to a dead friend that kept him caring for greenhorns season after season. "What will you do?" you ask. "When the beaver are gone." He's quiet for a long time. "Keep going. Further west, deeper into country that's not trapped out, until there's nowhere left. And then?" He shrugs. "Then I don't know. It's matter of fact. Men like Gabe don't retire. They just keep going until they can't. You sleep that night on the ground one last time. You dream of cold water and beaver traps and the endless work of staying alive. But you dream too of a bed in St. Louis, of clean sheets, of a life where survival isn't the entire goal. Morning comes, rendezvous continues, and you've made your choice. You'll finish what you started. But come spring, you'll walk away carrying your scars and knowledge, and the understanding that some kinds of freedom cost more than they're worth. And somewhere in the grass, a pocket watch lies forgotten, marking a time that no longer matters. And so our journey ends, or rather pauses, because stories like these don't truly end. The young man from St. Louis did return to civilization the following spring. He married, worked in his father's business, lived a long life. But those who knew him said there was something different about him, something distant in his eyes, as if part of him was still sitting beside a fire in the Rocky Mountains. And old Gabe, he vanished into the wilderness. There are stories of a lone trapper seen in the Oregon country in the 1840s. Stories of a man who'd forgotten how to speak English properly, who moved like a shadow. Maybe it was him, maybe not. But here's what that winter of 1831 teaches us. Survival was never about the fire alone. It was about who kept the fire alive. Never about the shelter. It was about who made room for you inside it. Never about the food. It was about who gave you the larger portion without being asked. In the coldest nights, the only warmth that truly matters is the kind we keep for each other. The mountain men survived by becoming something between civilized and wild. They learned that care doesn't always look like kindness. Sometimes it looks like a silent hand steadying you in freezing water, like an extra piece of jerky tossed without comment, like someone keeping watch while you sleep, tending flames through the darkest hours. Every generation faces its own winter. Not always literal cold, but times when survival seems impossible, when comfort is memory, when the only choice is to keep moving or lie down. And in those times, what saves us isn't strength or skill or knowledge. What saves us is care. The quiet, unglamorous work of keeping each other alive. The small gestures that become enormous when everything else is cold and dark and hostile. I hope you found some warmth in this story tonight. I hope your own bed feels softer for having heard of harder ones. I hope you remember as you drift into sleep that you're part of an unbroken chain of humans who've cared for each other through every winter that ever was. Thank you for spending this night with me. Thank you for trusting me with your quiet hours. May you find in your own life what those mountain men found in theirs. Not adventure, not freedom, but the simple, profound gift of someone who keeps the fire alive while you rest. Sleep well. And in the morning, when you wake warm and safe, remember that someone somewhere is facing their own frozen night. And maybe, just maybe, your warmth tomorrow can be the fire that keeps them alive. Good night.